National governments throughout the West are populated by people who are fundamentally post-national in their outlook. They're educated to be highly skeptical of nationalism. They're actually skeptical is being charitable. They're very suspicious of nationalism as being not just passé, but actually morally dubious as an approach. They don't think in terms of national interest, and I think they're actually not able to think in terms of national interest. And so we have an ironic and ultimately rather tragic situation in which we have these things called nation states, which continue to exist, but which are run by people who don't have a great deal of affinity for the states that for the nations that they represent, though they are perfectly able as smooth political operators to employ the relevant rhetoric when it's necessary for them. Most obviously, recently in the context of calls for national mobilization in regard to the increasingly fraught situation in Ukraine and the ongoing conflict with Russia and China and so on and so forth.
Ukraine flags.
All right, so there is an attempt to flag wave or to push the collective we idea, but it rather fails. It seems frankly ludicrous in an environment or when it's coming from exactly the same people who have spent the last generation destroying any sensible notion of a collective we. So you can't pull that lever anymore.
You're saying it's sort of a hypocrisy that there's this kind of the Ukraine flags and you buy it everywhere. Everyone's, let's get behind you, and we can't even get behind our own country as a symbol of anything. Do you notice it being even worse here than say in Canada or USA, where at least whenever I've been there's flags, you've got the Canadian flag, the American flag. People, is it even worse here than the incentive to not be nationalistic?
That's a good question. I happen to live in Britain, and so I'm most familiar with that as an example, and that probably biases me to think that it must be the worst here. It's just because you're confronted with it more. I think that might be the case if I try to just take a step back from my own kind of subjective immersion in Britain and constant confrontation with that idea. Then I think one might say it is pretty bad in the UK. After all, this is a country where I forget which Labour politician it was who took time out of her day to post on Twitter about one of her constituents flying an England flag on St. George's Day from the window of his own home. As being a particular, your listeners will
Emily
remember,
Thornbury,
right? That's a pretty obvious and egregious example of what I'm describing. That was 7 or 8 years ago. Now that I think about it, so that seems pretty typical here in Britain. But I wouldn't say that there's a great deal of difference, frankly. I'm certainly, after Britain, I'm relatively familiar with the Canadian scene. Trudeau, rather remarkably, very early on in his premiership, declared Canada to be the first post-national country.
And not hiding it then?
No, he wasn't hiding it. He wasn't ashamed by it. And I think he's probably still not ashamed by it.
Do they sing the national anthem anymore? Airport. What do you sing?
Well, very recently they have been in great numbers. I mean, Trump has been terrific in that sense for animating, I think, a fairly large number of Canadians to overt displays of national pride that had become atypical recently. But, it's still a country that, I'm not trying to suggest that you can't find Canadians who are proud of their country. But I'm also not suggesting that you can't find Britons that are intensely proud of their country. It's just they're considered to be rather suspicious and disreputable figures. And they might well have met their member of parliament calling them out for being dinosaurs and rather passé as a result of it.
What's really frustrating about this is that sort of the supposed right-wing national group, which doesn't seem to be very large in the United Kingdom, if they keep being pushed so far to deny their nationality and not be proud and all of this and more immigration, all the things that they voted against, there will be a reaction, as you say. And I feel like the post-national argument will be, aha, you see? Do you know what I mean? It's like you can't win, because if they keep going the way they are, the politicians, the elites, it does lead to a civil war. They're going to feel vindicated, the elites I'm talking about, because they're going to say, you see, the right wing did rise up and fight. But they won't see, I suppose, but only because you pushed them into a corner for so many years. Do you see what I'm saying?
I'm not sure I do.
They feel like, it feels like I'm hearing from the government, okay, anybody who believes that their culture is being replaced is some sort of terrorist. Well, eventually, some of those people will react. You'll see people rise up in the streets and smash windows and attack mosques and such. And rather than those elites going, gosh, we really pushed those people into a corner, they'll be saying we were right all along by classifying them as terrorists.
Yeah, okay. I agree. That's exactly what they're going to do. Safely from their bunker in Switzerland or California or wherever they, these are. So yeah, I think that's very likely.